Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree, and today I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up. The first book that I want to mention is The Stormcrow by Kaylin Josephson. The Stormcrow follows the main character, Anthea, and she is the daughter of a ruler of a kingdom where they use these magical giant crows to kind of control their entire environment, whether it's to help with crops, to bring rain or other storms, to fight. Every crow has a different type of magic that they use, and this keeps their kingdom thriving. When their kingdom is attacked, Anthea's mother ends up getting killed in the process, and her sister Kaliza has to step up to the throne. Anthea ends up falling into a deep depression, and Kaliza has to make some drastic decisions despite Anthea not wanting to even get out of bed. Now that's all in the first probably 3 chapters of the book, so no spoilers there. But essentially the book kind of takes away where Anthea ends up going into a neighboring kingdom looking for a union and marriage in order to unite their kingdoms and fight another kingdom, the one that attacked initially. Whew, words are hard today. The journey that Anthea has to take is not only to unite her kingdom with the other kingdom to have allies, but also to find a way to save her kingdom from falling. So this book I ended up giving only 3 stars. I would say it's sometimes, I was considering 2.5 or 3. I was generous with the 3. The premise of it was so incredibly interesting. I absolutely loved the idea of these magic crows, things that you can ride as well as utilize for the magic. It just sounded super unique, and that was very well executed, I thought. Unfortunately, some of the storyline fell a bit flat for me, and honestly the biggest part was the romance. There was somewhat of a love triangle in this book, and it just felt very unnecessary to me. I really liked the one character who she was talking to and possibly sparking a romance. But the other love interest, who ended up being somewhat the main love interest, I did not like him whatsoever. I felt like he was very annoying. I felt like their chemistry was very stale, and that there was absolutely nothing for them to spark a romance. And it seemed so immediate that it really threw me out of the pages. Like every time he would come onto the page and they would do something, it just felt so forced to me, and I wasn't really in the mood to deal with that. I ended up finishing the book because I listened to the audiobook, and that helped me a lot. I actually really liked the audiobook narrator. It was, I know her first name's Robin. If you listen to the audiobook for The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, she is one of the narrators for that book as well. So I really did like her, and she brought a lot to the story, but it was just the story itself was not for me. So I ended up giving that 3 stars. Could recommend it. I think it would be for some people, but unfortunately not for me. The next book I'd like to get to is Dead Until Dark by Charlene Harris. So if you don't know, which I feel like this is one of those books that everyone knows about, Dead Until Dark is the Sookie Stackhouse series, which spurned the True Blood HBO show. True Blood is one of my favorite shows ever, and I was collecting these books for the longest time. My goal was I always would tell myself, I'm just going to wait until I get every single book in the series and then I'll binge them. But I found out, especially this year, that I'm not the best binge reader because I get sick of series sometimes. However, this one is so light and fun that I'm like, maybe once a month I can really do that. And then if I come into gaps of my collection, I'll just go buy that book. It's not a big deal. But a quick recap, if you don't know anything about True Blood or Sookie Stackhouse, is this is a book about vampires in Bone Temps, Louisiana, I believe. Yep, Louisiana, where Sookie, our main character, she can read the minds of others, and that's always made her different in her town and from the people around her. So when a vampire comes into their small town, which is very out of the norm, she takes a fascination to him and finds out that she can't read his thoughts. So it's a breath of fresh air for her because she's never been used to that before. They end up, there's kind of like some murder involved, and there's some shady business and questions about more vampires coming to the area. And this all takes place with a budding romance between Sookie and Bill Compton, the main vampire in the book. So I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It was just so fun and lighthearted. I wouldn't say maybe it's the best quality writing, but I also didn't have a problem with it either. It's, you know, if you're kind of looking for a trashy paranormal romance, this might be right up your alley. I certainly just had fun with it, and a big part of that was the nostalgic factor for me, where this read exactly like the first season of True Blood. I heard that it diverts after book 2, that the show goes one way, the books go the other way, but this book was so nostalgic, especially because I've been trying so hard to get my husband to watch True Blood with me. He's never seen it. I want to rewatch it. I'm slowly going to work on him. But in the meantime, the books will have to do, and so far I'm really enjoying what I read. So that was that. The third book I finished in the month of September was Endless Water, Starless Sky. And I apologize, I had to figure out, I can never remember the title of this because it's kind of long and clunky. And the first book, so let me tell you, let me back up. The first book in this series is Bright Smoke, Cold Fire. Oh, it's on the back. I didn't even have to look at my shelf. Anyway, so Bright Smoke, Cold Fire by Rosamund Hodge is the first book in this series. This is the second book, the sequel, and it is only a duology, so it finishes. And I ended up giving this one 3 stars as well. I was interested enough in the first book, and the first book is essentially a Romeo and Juliet retelling with zombies and necromancy. Sounds awesome, and it was definitely very interesting. I'm pretty sure I gave the first book 4 stars. I was definitely interested in it. They kind of take your main characters and cast from Romeo and Juliet and turn them a little bit. So Romeo and Juliet are still in there. They talk about a few of the side characters like Mercutio and stuff. They have either limited roles or their names are changed. Like I'm pretty sure, is it Rosalie or whoever, Rosaline in Romeo and Juliet? Her name is like Runajo. I think they pronounce it Runajo in this series. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be the comparable character. Juliet is a weapon to her people. She's named the Juliet, and she doesn't actually have another name. But she is used to control the dead and be a weapon to serve her family. Romeo is I can't even remember, because this book really didn't stick with me, unfortunately, as you're going to find out. But Romeo is in another family who are feuding with the Juliet's family. Runajo, who's another main character, is a priestess who works for this group that sacrifices people in order to hold the zombies called the Revenants away. It's a bit complicated when you start thinking about it, and the story itself is very thick. It's not that it's not interesting, but it is very hard to wade through sometimes. And I think the thing that I struggled with the second book was just that sometimes I would get so bogged down by the little details that I wouldn't know what the overall plot was. And then sometimes it was just genuinely boring. I don't know if I would reread this series, and this might end up one day being in an unhaul video. We'll see. But I really liked the first one in comparison. This one was just kind of, I got through it just to say I got through it and finished the series. The next book I finished in the month of September was The Future of Another Timeline by Annalee Newitz. So this book is about time travel. It has 2 main characters. You have the first character, who is Tess. She is a geologist who time travels. So she goes back in time to study different periods and bring back to her present, which is 2022. So you follow Tess as she is in this kind of rogue group of women who are trying to change history in order to get more women's rights. Because the timeline that Tess lives in, her women's rights and non-binary folks' rights are extremely limited. And Tess and her group of people got together because they realized that things that they used to remember, such as abortion being legal, was erased from someone's timelines. So they find out that there's like a bigger organization of men who are working to essentially eliminate all women's rights throughout history. The other timeline you follow is Beth, and Beth is a teenager in 1992, and it's more of a personal focal point. So where Tess is working on this large scale operation in order to save all of women's rights, you focus on Beth, whose life is being affected by these changes, particularly with abortion and abuse and just being a female teenager in the 90s. Eventually, these work to kind of figure out how these two timelines do collide, but that's spoilers, so I'm not going to get into that. But it is a very interesting book, and I did end up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. I got an ARC of this, which I was so happy to, and there is a review on my Goodreads if you want more. Although, I wouldn't really trust Goodreads because I get very lazy when I write my reviews, so this is why, another reason I wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I digress. So this actually just came out September 22nd, I believe. But I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was extremely well done in my opinion. Now, this is definitely baby sci-fi. I don't read a lot of sci-fi. It's something I want to get into, but this is baby steps. Perfect if you want to dip your toes into the sci-fi field. Because while it does have time travel, the time travel part is not nearly as fleshed out as really hardcore sci-fi fans would like it to be. It's just kind of one of those books where you are told that there's time travel and this is how it happens and that's it. Essentially in this book you have these rocks that they call the machines that have been in our history forever, and you time travel. That's pretty much it. There's nothing deeper than that, and they don't really explain the mechanics of it. But it's not really about the time travel. It's about this women's history, women's rights, and these two girls in particular, Tess and Beth. I extremely liked the commentary on feminism and what would happen in the world if either our history was changed, where, you know, it starts off, there's a quote in the beginning of the book, and I'll just read it because I really like it. But it says, "Up to this point, travelers have merely observed history. The point is to change it." And it says it's by Senator Harriet Tubman. So it kind of looks at in that way of like what happens if women had rights earlier than we did. And then on the other hand, it looks at what happens if our rights were taken away, which is very relevant to today's society and the problems that we're facing. So the commentary on this I thought was absolutely brilliant and terrifying. I would not want to be in this world whatsoever, but it was fascinating to visit. The other thing that I really liked was how, like I said, the macro scale of Beth's story, how some small decisions could make or break her life. So if you were to look at time travel as a whole and we're changing this one little thing, how crazy it would be that Beth's life would be so impacted by that. I would say there are definite trigger warnings for sexual abuse, violence, and rape. Just so you guys know, that is in here. I didn't see any trigger warnings anywhere in the book, so that's something to be aware of. But I do think if you're okay stomaching that and you're able to read it, it does add to the issues that are presented here. The other cool thing about this that I found out was that the author actually got people she knew, and there's a fake band in here called Grape, and on the author's YouTube page, I will link it down below, but she had people make a music video as if this band were real, and I just thought that was so cool. And there's not a lot of views on it, and I just think people, after reading this should definitely go watch that video. It was so fun. Like I said, the link will be down below if you're interested. But overall, highly recommend this if you can stomach the trigger warnings as well as the low sci-fi. The 5th book I read this month was Alana, The First Adventure. So this is a brand new book to me. I've never read this book in my life. And this book in particular is about Alana, who is a 10-year-old girl who really wants to be a knight. Her and her twin brother are turning of the age of 10. In this world, you see the males go into to be pages in order to eventually work their way up into knighthood. And the females are sent to this academy where you can practice and hone magic. Alana has some magic like her brother, but her brother is the one who really wants to learn more about magic and hone that skill, and Alana wants to be a knight. So she ends up hatching this plan that she's going to pretend that they're both boys because their father is kind of absent and doesn't really pay attention to them. So she gets away with dressing like a boy and going into to start her journey as a page while her brother goes to the academy to study magic. I really liked this. I ended up giving it about 4 stars. I didn't really want to rate it, to be honest, because this particular book is a middle grade, and my understanding is that the whole series ends up being like young adult, but as she starts off 10 here, I believe it goes pretty, like she ends up aging quite a bit. I want to say she's like 15 by the end of this novel, maybe 14. I know she ages quite a bit. So the writing in this is a little bit younger than typical YA, but it's such an influential book because a lot of people have read this at some point in their lives and their childhood. So I actually just really enjoyed it. It was a fun, light read. Alana is badass, and to be written in like the late 70s, and I'm pretty sure I read somewhere, I think it was on Tamora Pierce's Goodreads bio, she was writing this during the sexual revolution of the 70s, and this ended up coming out, I think, in 83. And you could just tell that it's so progressive for its time, where like women could do just the same thing men can do, and it doesn't matter. You can still kick ass and take names. And like I said, it was just a fun read. I have really nothing bad to say about it because it was pretty simple, and it's like 200 pages, I think. 260, actually a little bit more than I thought. And the entire series, I'm pretty sure, is rather short, but I will definitely be continuing with this. I only own the first one, so I do need to obtain the rest, but this is a series that I will definitely continue on, and I'll keep you guys updated as I do. The 6th book I read this month was Psycho. I definitely felt like I needed some chilling vibes this month. Psycho is the novel that inspired the famous movie Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock. And this is also a movie I have never watched. So reading the book has really made me want to go watch it. But Psycho is about Norman Bates. He runs a hotel with his mother. Every time people come to the motel, they start disappearing. So you have a bunch of people who are trying to investigate what's happening with this motel, and you're following them a little bit, and you're following Norman, and you're just trying to figure out everything that's kind of happening. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I think, considering that it was written in the 1950s, it holds up pretty well over time. I think the only thing that I really noted was there was a reference for transvestite, which really isn't acceptable in today's society anymore. We don't use that term. And there's also reference to multiple personalities. They don't actually say that, but it's referenced. And it was a little bit outdated, I think, how they talked about it, but it was still relevant to today's. So if this was taken and just rewritten in today's world, like, I think this would have been outstanding. And for being such a short book, I was surprised that I got invested as I did. I absolutely want to go watch the movie now because I have never watched it, and I've never watched the Bates Motel show either. So this was like completely fresh and new to me. I mean, granted, I kind of knew the premise of Psycho, but yeah, I just really enjoyed it. Now, I did start this book. It is kind of dry. I would actually recommend doing the audiobook because I read the audiobook and it's kind of creepy. The narrator does an extremely good job with it, and there's also some music every time like something's about to happen or like you're transitioning into chapters. So it ended up making like a really good experience. I would not recommend listening to this when you're driving home in the dead of night because you would probably get freaked out. Especially if you are scared, this would definitely freak you out as an audiobook. But like I said, the writing itself, because it's kind of dated a little bit in that way, it is very dry and very blunt and to the point. So if you're not into that, you might want to pick up the audiobook. I tried to read it during a 24-hour reading vlog that I did on my Instagram back in July, and I just couldn't get through it that day. But I'm happy I waited now because it was definitely the perfect way to get me into the spooky season. I'm going to talk about my TBR for October in this video, mainly because I don't like TBRs. I have a hard time sticking to them because I'm an extreme mood reader, and it's just not something I've tried to force myself or like plan out books ahead of time, and it pretty much always fails. But I'm in such a mood to read the books that I have, and I'm going to get to them in about the order I'm going to go through them right now, based on either things I'm interested in or priority. So I figured I'm just going to talk about these books right here, right now, and that way you also don't get used to the idea of me doing TBR videos, because it's probably not going to happen often. But I did want to mention that I am currently reading the Raven cycle for the first time. So I'm probably about 15 minutes from completing the Raven Boys audiobook. I am very close as we speak. But I would like to continue to listen to those books for the rest of the month. I don't know if I'm going to get done with them, but I'm really interested in the first book already. So I probably will make it through all of them by the end of the month. The only other audiobook that I definitely plan on listening to if I get done with the Raven cycle would be the second book of the Diviners series. I can't remember. I don't think it's Layer of Dreams. There we go. And then Before the Devil Breaks You, I think, is book 3. But Layer of Dreams, if I don't get to it this month, I'll probably get to it next month, mostly because I have been putting off listening to that audiobook for a long time because it's huge. The first physical book that I'm going to finish, Five Dark Fates by Kendra Blake. I also realized that I probably haven't been saying the authors' names much in these books, so I apologize. This is my first wrap-up / TBR video, and I'm just a mess. What can I say? But I am almost done with Five Dark Fates. I really like it so far, and I'm probably going to be finished by this coming weekend. It's already October 3rd, so I'll probably finish it by October 6th. I absolutely love this series, though. Right now I'm anticipating, and I'm clutching my heart because I just feel like it's going to break me. But that is what I'm reading currently, so this should be done by this month. The next book I want to get to in the month of October is A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. I got this arc, and I'm super excited to read it because it just sounds like everything I wanted Children of Blood and Bone to be. And I'm not trying to knock that. I actually just read Children of Blood and Bone back in August, but it was not something that I really loved. Just kind of bored me. I'll just put it out there. But it bored me a little bit, and this one definitely seems much more up my alley as far as, you know, blood magic, two sisters fighting for a throne. I'm extremely excited to read this. This comes out, I believe, I want to say October 22nd. I don't know why the 22nd is sticking in my head because I said that for a book that came out in September too, but this comes out at the end of October. So I want to get to this one early. It's probably going to be my next read because I want to be able to review it before it officially comes out. The next book I'd like to get to is Living Dead in Dallas. This is the second book of the Sookie Stackhouse series. I don't really have to go into explanation, but I just really want to continue the series. It's super fun. I think with all my serious books that I have in the mix, this one will be nice to break it up. And it's vampires and a lot of fun things, and why wouldn't I want to read this during October? The next book I really want to get to this month is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Murrin. Murrin? One of those. I ended up getting this in my Fairy Loot, and I specifically didn't end up pre-ordering it because I knew this was coming in Fairy Loot, and I wanted this really bad. And like, look how beautiful this side is, and it's signed. I'm so excited. But this is going around BookTube right now, so I don't think I really need to go into a huge explanation, but it's a witch and a witch hunter being forced into a marriage, and them trying to learn how to put up with each other and survive all these shenanigans that ensue. I heard this is kind of like new adulty, and I'm totally down for that. So I hope I get to this by the end of the month. I'd also like to get to Rage by Cora Carmack. This is the sequel to Roar, which came out 2 years ago. The author ended up having some medical issues, and she had to put off this book until this year. It came out in August, and I absolutely loved the first book so much. So I would definitely like to get to this one because I just love me some fantasy romance. I mean, this is heavy romance. Cora's actually well, from my knowledge, she writes primarily romances and new adult romances. So this is a YA fantasy romance, and knowing this going into it, I absolutely loved it. But it also has like elemental magic and storm magic, and it's just, I just find this so unique and refreshing. So I really can't wait to get back into the series, and hopefully I will be able to do that this month. The last book I'm going to put on this list is Burning Glass by Catherine Purdy. So I actually had just won this book in a giveaway, and I told the girl who I won it from, I do actually talk to frequently on Instagram, so I told her I'm going to try to get to this as soon as possible so we could talk and discuss about it. I, to be honest, have no idea what this book's about. Her gift, it says her gift is The Emperor is Cursed, and that just sounds so cool. So I want to go into this blind. I don't really want to know much about it, and if you have read this book, let me know if you liked it. So the last book that I want to get to, which is not here yet because it has not come out, is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I mean, Leigh Bardugo, do I have to explain anymore? But I am really excited to read this, especially being an adult series. I've heard of some mixed reviews, but a couple reviews that I really trust liked it a lot, so that's what I'm going to go with, and I'm just going to keep my excitement because I can't wait. So that comes out on the 9th next week, and I'm super excited. So that's the last one that I really want to get to. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me as I talked about the books I read in September as well as the ones I want to get to in October. If you read any of these books, please let me know down in the comments what ones were your favorite. Is there any books that you are also planning to get to that have been on my list this month? Just feel free to give me any other suggestions based on the books that I am going to read or I've read. If you have anything that's similar, I would love to know. Otherwise, I'll see you next time for my new video. Bye.